Hi, I'm Cameron Bonsey. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Coast of Maine Brands. And I am here with Felicia Newman, who is our Director of Operations. Felicia, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I actually am working from home today, so that's pretty nice.
That's rare for you. You're all over the place making soil, doing recipes, doing CapEx plans. You are just a Renaissance woman. It's amazing.
Or
Right?
a cat herder, depending on the day.
Are you getting to do any farming today?
Not today, but I did over the weekend. So yeah, getting ready to plant garlic. It's time to got all the garlic cleaned.
That's awesome. I mean, that's why we're hoping that these interviews and these podcasts will be able to be shared not only with our staff, but also with the consumer too, so they can get a sense of who we are, what our expertise is, and why we do what we do. What I have asked you to do is to help me, so that I've only been here 15 years. I still get confused. We've had so many changes. But it's important that people know that we have a couple of different production facilities. We're constantly adding new products. Over the last couple of years, we added a couple of three new products. We added our tomato and veg, our rose and flower, and our acid-loving plants mixes. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons that we did that was, as people who can see video will see my back with these kids holding quality lobster compost, one of the most remarkable soil products on the market, right? It really founded us. But what happens outside of New England is that sometimes people don't realize, even though it says it on the bag, that it is for vegetable gardening. People don't always understand that. So we did a tomato and veg soil, and we have come up with a formulation that is very effective. It's not cloddy. It's made consistently about the same way, and I wanted to talk to you about that. So I'm going to let it rip. So one of the things that we don't have on that bag yet, we use natural ingredients, but we don't have an Organic Material Review Institute sticker on there. A lot of people see that and say it's not organic. So can you explain that process and how we get it and how we work with them?
Yeah, so on those three products, actually, it's all the same ingredients that we use in other products. So it's just a matter of getting the paperwork done. But we've just, and I hope to hear this week, went through a full OMRI audit that's taken over a year, where they've been auditing every raw material ingredient all the way back to the source that we purchase. And then I have to have proof of purchase and like where we get it, where it came from, lots of manufacturing questions if it's a product that was manufactured that we buy. So like, for example, fishbone meal comes from like the processing of fish, and the racks get dried and like how they get dried and making sure there's pathogen kills. So they audit all kinds of stuff like that to make sure that it meets the NOP, National Organic Program Standard. That's what OMRI does. And I think we're about to wrap that up. And after I finish that work, then I can start back over again, reapplying for the products that we have that I haven't gone through. So the new application process is different than the auditing of existing products that we have. So it's just a workload thing.
It is a workload thing, and sometimes people see it and say, well, why isn't it there? There's many reasons. There's a lot of work that goes into that. First is to make sure that we're doing things properly to begin with, and then having that audit process, and then also to know that it takes a long time for us. We may actually get OMRI approval, and the bags have not been updated yet. So you'll see bags out there that may not say it. That's why you want to come to coastofmaine.com. Once we have those approvals, we put them up there, and don't ever hesitate to call us. So, and the amount of work that you have to do to make that happen astounds me. But we were taught, but the inputs, talk about with the tomato and veg. Let's just kind of talk about the basic recipe with tomato and veg.
Yeah, and it is similar to other products, but it's specifically for tomato and vegetable garden, is our compost, which is naturally high in calcium anyway, but we don't have a calcium guarantee on there because it puts the packaging into a different world of regulation.
Sure. Yep.
So it's peat moss, compost, and aged bark, and that's the raw materials in there, and in like specifically it's the compost that we use that makes it good for tomatoes and vegetables. So I use it in my farm all the time, and it actually works really great, make high quality produce.
So we, I mean, we have two facilities, one in Marion, Maine, and one in Quarryville, Pennsylvania, with some different equipment. We're basically using a front end loader when we're blending in Maine, correct?
Well, we use the front end loader and the windrow turner to mix.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I skipped over the windrow turner. But laying it out, and then down in Quarryville, we actually have a mix line, correct?
Yeah, we have both. We have, because that facility is quite a bit bigger. So we have a mix line where you have hoppers of individual ingredients that roll onto a belt, and then it all gets combined in a mix head and then spits out finished mix product. So that's one way, that's a mix line. And then you can also, when you say lay out, like, I don't know that everybody understands what that means, but if a recipe, let's pretend it's 50% bark and 50% peat moss, a windrow turner is a linear rototiller, essentially, great big one. And so you lay out buckets of peat moss and then buckets of bark. And then the windrow turner, they're called straddle turners, is the style of turners we use. It runs through, and then you flip it. And so it mixes it up, and then you flip it to get the bottom to the top and vice versa. So that's the two ways to mix product.
And one of the things that is a huge part of your quality control is to make sure those products perform with the same efficacy, and that their appearance is very, very similar. It's never going to be perfect, right? It's going to be, you may notice some little differences from site to site, but the efficacy is going to be the same, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So and then, you know, it's funny, I came up with this, not came up with this question, but I'll get this question, but you're growing organically. We just had you here last week. We had vegetables from your garden. Maybe some of our folks have saw the video on Instagram and Facebook. It was delicious. There is a difference in the flavor when you grow organically. Mm-hmm. Can you explain any of that? You know, why it happens? Yeah, so there's one of the things that I've seen in practice is that if you take fallow ground, meaning ground that hasn't been used, and farm it, and the first year conventional gardening versus, and actually Rodale Institute has done incredible studies on this, and they happen to be just down the road from our Quarryville plant. Yep. Free
to invite me to your site. And I'm sure I could go take classes.
So, you know, just, you know, back in 2002, I shot video at we actually did a piece on the. At
Rodale, yeah. Yeah. So basically they do comparisons, right? Mm-hmm. And they measure scientifically all different kinds of things. But as I understand it, and as I've seen, like essentially anecdotally, because it's just me, but over time, conventional farming depletes soil, like, you know, either you know, plowing and disking or rototilling on a smaller scale, right? Like little gardens will deplete, and then only adding, let's say 10, 10, 10, will deplete organic matter in the soil. where an organic methodology applied to a different plot, even side by side, like you continually renew the organic matter and treat the soil microbiology well. So as you get further over time of those two methodologies is where you really see the difference. And I would encourage people to go and look at scientific evidence here, and Rodale does a great job. But I've certainly seen that here, like as you build your soil over time, like I have a little over a half an acre. I'm like approaching 3/4 of an acre under cultivation. Yep. And I have two big plots. I think most people that are home gardeners would consider them big.
Yes,
I'm a small farm, to be clear. Yep. But they're about a 1/4 acre plot each. One of them has been added to for 18 years.
Wow.
Maybe 17 years. I'd have to go, close to that. And before I worked for Coast of Maine, I was doing things like we were buying truckloads of sand and truckloads of compost. Couldn't get the quality of compost that of course I have access to now, but certainly amending the soil. And then I have a new garden plot that I've only been working, and it's all no-till since I've been with Coast of Maine. So that's 9 years. So it's 8 seasons. And consistently the older plot outperforms the newer plot, despite both being treated the same for the last 8 seasons from Coast of Maine, additives and compost. And the reason I believe that that's the case is soil microbe management over time. And so when you treat the soil really well over time, you end up producing higher quality products, whether it's nutrient density or just overall size. So because they're all treated the same, like both plots on my farm.
Yeah, so we were one of my notes was to ask about nutrients from the soil, and I think that one of the also one of the big things is of course no-till, and the subway systems that are occurring underground, the communication that's occurring that we don't want to disturb, that that biology is smarter than we are, and the plant will figure out what it needs to do, right? I always say it's like your kids know more than at least you think they do, and sometimes they teach you, and they can figure out stuff on their own, and the plants do the same thing. We know that the roots go deeper, the plants taste better, and they have a higher nutrient value. That is just true. So, I'm very proud of what we do there. And then, it's funny, I've with the tomato and veg and with rose and flower and the acid loving plants, those were, at least from my understanding, and I'm not embarrassed to embarrass myself because I do it all the time, but they weren't designed really to be container planters, right? They weren't really
Not really, no, but you could certainly use them that way, but that wasn't the original intent. The original intent was in bed, like it's particularly rose and flower and acid, like those are designed for plants that are perennials. So like generally that's border plantings and people's gardens and their houses that are permanent. So those are intended to be additives to those types of things.
Yeah, it's truly they're meant to be soil amendments, but you can, I think the other message too is that people can plant directly in them. That's a question that we get a lot. Is it a soil? Can I plant in it? In virtually all of our soils, because the compost is cured, it's not going to burn. You can plant directly in, or you can use it as an amendment. And that's the beauty of our soil. So
no, I plant in all of our stuff all the time. So it's probably my favorite part of my job, although I don't the ratio of hours that I get to spend doing that, there's just not enough hours in the week.
Well, I think that, you know, that's the beauty too. I think it's really important, and I think it's huge for our brand, is that since you got here, we've been able to record you doing a lot of that. And that people have come to trust you, know you, and because you're trustworthy, you know, and you love what you do. So it's a beautiful thing. On the tomato and veg, people ask about pH all the time. What is our target pH on the tomato and veg?
Yeah, 6.2 to 6.5. So same thing for rose and flower, but not for acid loving. That's actually much lower.
Yeah. So, and I also find that people are just getting back to that pH thing. Sometimes I think people don't pay attention to it enough, but then other times I think they think it has to be, you know, some plant. Well, you know, someplace it'll say this plant likes, you know, 6.2 to 6.5. All right. But if
like a really tight window, and then people get freaky because it's 6.6 or 6.0, like it's outside. But that when you're really in all practicality, particularly like most vegetables, like if we're talking about tomato and veg, could grow from like 5.8 to 7.2,
right,
and really not see any derogatory impacts on efficacy of the plants. You know, once you get out to the outer edge, they become more sensitive to circumstantial things like lack of water, like lack of irrigation, or too much sun. Like the further you get, the, you know, like it's like anything. When you get out of your comfort zone, you get flustered easily, I guess, like as a person. Right. And so plants are no different. Like they have a window of where they're happy. And when you get outside of that, then they start to react.
Do you ever get out of your comfort zone? I never see it, you know?
Do I have in my comfort zone? Where's the comfort zone?
I always think you're there. I always think you know everything more than anybody else. I'm always out of my comfort zone when I'm talking to you, you know?
I will say I did feel a lot of pressure when I started 9 years ago to be the subject matter expert. And there's a big line of books. You've seen it because you've been at the house, but I probably spent $1,000 on published books on soil science. Like I bought soil science textbooks, organic textbooks, like anything that I could get my hands on, and read everything. And then on top of it, had practical experience. So I took my role as the expectation of subject matter expert really seriously when I came here. And it's been fun to prove those things out in practice, right? Because practice is just anecdotal evidence to support a theory. So we've had a good time with that.
Well,
but yeah,
you've done an amazing job with it. So it's all great. And then as you talked about adding organic matter to your own soil, and we know this is what everybody needs to do. We actually have, you know, a nice line of supplements to add to all our soil products. And so we have, you know, I always list up here, you know, we have our Stonington plant food. I personally, and you and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, which a lot of people watched, but that blend and that uniform granular blend of, you know, the lobster meal, the kelp meal, and the worm castings, and a few other things, I think is an amazing soil product. So especially for somebody who's doing vegetable gardening, that's what I would also focus on as an amendment, because it's pretty complete. And then of course we have lobster meal and fish bone meal and kelp meal and worm castings individually. But if you're keeping it simple and you can get it, and you can actually get the Stonington plant food from us in more places, That's always what I recommend. So and then the rose and flower planting soil, and what, that all these are beautiful bags. I'm probably gonna, as we talk, I'm probably gonna pull up bags that I'm gonna cover your face when I pull up the bags. I'm not even gonna show you, right? So I think that one of the things, again, when people think about flowers, they come in with a particular flower. There are a lot of people that love growing roses. Saying rose and flower does get more people to go, oh, I can use that, rather than saying quaddy or some of our other products. And again, that product currently does not have an OMRI organic material review sticker on it. It is made in the same way as the tomato and veg. So the ingredients are natural, and it's a great product. Can you go over kind of that basic recipe too? And
yeah, they're all very similar, but that particular recipe has a little different ratio because of the roses in particular, and other perennial flowers, or like woody perennials.
Yeah.
You could use that for, and it's got a higher percentage of bark. I wouldn't call it barky. So like, for example, on that product, let's just make it real simple for consumers, right? So you have, let's say it's a perennial bag, because we can break flowers up into perennials and annuals at this point.
Yep.
Let's leave acid loving perennials out of it. That's a different pool, right? Okay. So this is the same. So roses and other perennial flowers. Like you want to, at least once a year, like you want to, if you have existing mulch that's in that bed, scrape it back. Lay like an inch or two down of this. If you have like a hard tined rake, not the flimsy ones, but like a hard tined rake, just scrape it in, and mix it in with your native soil, and then lay a layer of mulch over top to hold the moisture down, and then water in. And that's it. Like that's your maintenance. And so the putting mulch over top of this product is actually pretty important, because it's intended to work that way. So if you read the backs of those bags, especially that one, it actually tells you to do that. Because I wrote it. So listen. Yeah. Because that's how you're going to be successful, right? So this year, like, or any year, right? If you don't have solid irrigation, or you have to go out and hand water, like, and things get away from you in the summertime, having mulch protects you from weeds. So like your flowers don't have weed pressure, and then the rose and flower food is going to feed your soil, both, organically. So.
Well, I think it's important that all of these products feed your soil. That is a basic tenet of everything we do. So I think that's great. And the fact that you've written the instructions on the back of the bag means that if somebody doesn't have success, it's all your fault, correct?
I take those calls too sometimes.
I don't even take the calls. I just go,
Felicia's fault.
Felicia did this. I don't know what your circumstance is, but if you failed, let me get you on the phone with Felicia. That's how I deal with it, right? But you do a beautiful job with that. And then, I'm looking here, and we talked about planting. Again, it can be used. You would use this in containers also.
Mm-hmm, you can.
It's really pretty light, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and again,
it doesn't have perlite in it, but it's on the lighter side of the scale on purpose.
And then when we get to acid loving plants and that soil that we put together, again, we're targeting folks so that they know exactly what the soil's for. The bags are beautiful. What's in it is beautiful. And really with that, pH is a huge target, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's about nutrient availability and what at certain pH ranges, and that's so acid loving plant. So just to define it for people, we're talking about things like berries, particularly blueberries, high bush or low bush.
Yep.
But most berries, like at least somewhat acidic soil. And then on the flower ornamental side, we've got things like hydrangeas and azaleas and like that. Ferns like acidity as well. So by acidity, like even the plants that I just named off, there's a range that they like. So depending on which one, like that's at the higher or the lower end of that range. And depending on where you are in the country, your base soil could be higher or lower. So in our case, we use peat moss to have the pH, to get the pH lower. So like that mix has more peat moss and less compost because we needed the pH to go low. And that also is intended to be mixed in with native soil to drop the pH or to keep it low, depending on what the native soil pH is.
Yeah, I mean, it's going, and people should always be getting, well, or most of the time, be getting soil tests, you know, to find out that information and what the health of their native soil is too. It's not going to cure all soil issues, and you may need more than you think you do too. The on one question I always get asked on the acid side is that when people have a soil, they may not be buying a new amendment, or they're trying to, whether it's in a container or in ground, and the soil is not acid enough. What is your recommendation for the best way to organically lower soil pH? Because I think it always seems pretty difficult for me. It always seems like,
oh yeah, it's much easier to raise the pH of media than it is to lower the pH. There's only specific things that you can do to lower the pH, and it depends kind of where you're starting from and where you want to go to. So like if you're a gardener, for example, and you've got a big area, like I have, for example, high bush blueberries, because I can't do anything in a normal scale. I have like 50 of them. And normally, like a person can't afford to go buy 10 pallets of acid loving soil to go prep like a quarter or half an acre for blueberries. And so one of the ways that you can do that is use elemental sulfur pellets. We don't even sell them actually.
right.
But that's a really slow burn, not burn, that's a bad word to use here in this case, but like a slow change.
Yep.
So that's actually like biology, soil microbes breaking down sulfur, and I believe the methodology is changing it to sulfuric acid, which is obviously acidic, and that's what drives that whole mechanism to lower the pH. But it is very slow, and you're not going to take soil from an 8.0 to a 5.0 with sulfur. It's
Right.
It's not so the easiest way, if you have a garden patch and you can till it or like hoe it or whatever, is to get bales of retail peat, like 2.2s or 3.8s, and it's just plain peat moss. And usually just plain peat moss is like 3.2, 3.4 pH, and to mix that in. That's actually the easiest way for a home gardener to lower their pH.
Okay. Because we want to keep it simple, and you know, understanding that when the pH is key, and the peat.
I mean, there's also, if you're doing it on a small scale and you can buy acid loving soil, it accomplishes the same thing and also gives you soil microbes because of the compost that's in there. So but it depends on the scale that you want to do it. on, and how much you can afford to spend to do it, because like the cheapest way is sulfur, but it takes the longest time, and you know, it might not get you to where you want to go. Where you can make it happen immediately and build a raised bed out of acid loving and slap your high bush blueberries in there and have the right pH. But obviously that's at the opposite end of the cost spectrum.
So we're coming up to about a minute and a half because I'm running out of time on this particular meeting. And I just want to, you know, not talk, but I mean, I think that the key is.
Do you want me to recap the three
Yes.
in 60 seconds?
Could you do it for me? Recap.
All right.
Oh, you've got one.
I can see the timer. We got 105. Here we
go.
So we got 3 20-quart soils, tomato and veg, frozen flour, and acid loving. Those represent tomato and veg, me, acid loving, Anita, which is a sales rep, and roasted flour is Sula Valley, who is also a sales rep. Those are the representation of the things that we love to grow. Tomato and veg, make it real simple. If you're rototiller, if you're that kind of person, you mix it in. If you're no-till or you've got a bed that's existing, top dress with 2 inches, plant right in it. Rose and flower, same thing. If you're rototilling, same application process, but in this case, you want to cover with a mulch layer to hold your moisture in after you put that in and scratch it into the soil. That protects your plants and your bed for the season. All right, so then we have acid loving, and make it really simple. It depends on whether, like, how established your bed is and how old your plants are, like what their root system is, but generally speaking, 2-inch layer, scratch it in, mulch layer over top, water in. And that's as simple as it needs to be, because it's already at the right pH, and it's going to help feed your plants.
So even though we get interrupted, even though the rest of the audience may not know it, we're going to do this every week. We're going to help with educating our sales team and also our office team to know as much about us as possible. And then hopefully our consumers and our garden centers will listen to these when they get a chance to. This is a podcast, and it's also going to be out there on video, but somebody could download it and listen to it on their way to a local independent garden center. It's worth doing. Buy local. We're the best at it. And you, Felicia, are a huge reason for that. So thank you for being here. And I can't wait to see you next week.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.